Good morning, everyone. We could get started. I am substituting for Susan today as the acting chair of the Metro North Committee. So we're going to move right into the process, and we're going to start with public comments. Do we have speakers?
Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
Yes, we have four speakers this morning.
Okay.
The first speaker is Mr. Oren Getz. I'd like to remind all speakers that to keep your comments to 2 minutes, and please address an agenda item.
Okay. My name is Oren Getz, and I'd like to ask if Metro North, Kathy Rinaldi, ever got a response to a letter that she sent to New Jersey Transit in August. If so, please let us know what New Jersey Transit said. If not, let us know how you're going to follow up on that letter to get a response. Also, on October 14th, New Jersey Transit is going to make further reductions in train service. The reason given is they need the equipment for positive train control retrofit. But the real reason is because they're short engineers, and they're short up to about 45 engineers, and new engineers won't be coming through the training class until early 2019, actually in the spring of 19. So this would be a way of getting some relief to prevent trains being canceled unscheduled, people showing up at the train station just to find that trains are canceled. Now, what's happening is there's going to be no cuts on the Pascack Valley line or the Port Jervis line, but there will be some cuts on the Suffern line, which handles Bergen County and Main Line. Some of the trains are going to actually originate and terminate in Suffern. We'd like Metro North to explain that that's also Rockland County, and we would prefer not to have those trains cut. Also, one very important issue is we've not heard about what's happening with the Suffern train station. A letter was sent to Metro North about it from Ed Day, and we'd like to find out what's going on. I think the most important thing that's going to go on is that Metro North has to gain control of that station. They actually have to have possession of the station so they can do the necessary retrofits of the station. Look, a lot of work is being done on the station's east side of the Hudson. We need to do something to Suffern on the west side of this Hudson. It's absolutely critical. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jason Panero.
Good morning. Catherine, I want one detail that you can look at is the Mount Vernon West Station on the Harlem line. It's a disgrace. I use that station pretty much often. It needs some upgrades. John Lever tried to consider that station for future enhancements. And there should be more enforcement in terms of people having their feet on their seats. It is very disgusting when we see riders putting their feet on the seat. That is not the way that we ride all commuter rails. So Kathy, I want to know if you're gonna take a look on that, if they could enforce the rules, or the conductors are going to enforce the rules. And we want to see more reports regarding positive train control. And we want to see weekly service announcements like Transit does every weekend. So that's all I have to say for this month.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Clarita Balin.
Can we make that a little louder, please? We want to make sure we hear what she's, oh.
Hello.
Thank you.
I do not represent any particular group. I'm here as a user of public transportation, accessory, and buses. And sometimes when I have to, the the subway. I'm going to start with the subway. The reason I rarely use the subway because it's a very scary place. Places, they're very scary. First of all, sometimes the platforms, when the train gets to the platform, there are huge gaps. So I'm concerned that the wheels on my back will get trapped in that gap. Another thing is that when you get to a stop that has an elevator and the elevator is not working, there's no one you can ask for information. Where's the next stop with a working elevator? If you go up into the booths, the employees at the booths are very nasty. They're rude. I don't know if I would say that they pretend that they don't see me. That's my personal experience, or they ignore us. Sometimes, most of the time you can get that information is from the conductor, which that's not their job. I'm not sure if that's their job, but I guess they're more. But definitely, the toll booth workers are definitely very, very nasty individuals. As far as accessory, I think that MTA needs to make the carriers more responsible for the kind of service they provide. Just one brief example is that about 3 weeks ago, I was waiting for my ride, and he was just about, the time that he was supposed to pick me up, and I had called already to find out where he was, and I was told that he was only 2 blocks away from me. That was like 15 minutes before, and the reason I went searching for him because a month before I have
Ellen, I'm sorry.
I have
If
been
you could
left.
wrap up your comments, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Murray Bowden?
Good morning. On page 22 of your book today, you have a picture of the Waze. It's a lie, meaning it's absolutely not true. On Saturday, I went to Danbury. This is my sculpture that's in Danbury. I went to prepare to pick it up with my son. I went through the railroad crossing in Danbury, no indication. Coming back, there was traffic on the highway. I came the back road right through Virginia Road. No indication on my Waze. I use Waze all the time. So you're being presented with something that they say works. It's a lie. Second item, they have a procurement from Aspen Ariel's non-competitive miscellaneous procurement. It's a standard item. I looked it up on the internet. It's available from that company and other companies. There is absolutely no reason for it to be non-competitive. 2, you don't need a second unit. You might want one. If you need one, you rent it like everybody else does. Hartsdale Station, they recently painted the driveway coming to the back with the yellow line on both sides, completely illegal. They put up a tower in North Tarrytown. Everybody's upset. They put it up because they didn't have to ask the community. They did it anyhow. This organization, under the leadership of the current president, is out of control. They have no respect for the law. They make their own laws. And it's unacceptable and unsafe. Metro-North needs a new president. They need it immediately. The culture of Metro-North is rotten to the core. You're a community service. You follow the law where possible.
Wrap it up.
No, I'm not finished. When I'm finished, I will. When you tell you people you have to fire the president of Metro-North, that may take more than 2 minutes. The culture of Metro-North is rotten to the core. It needs new management. Follow the law. The law says a box is black and white. You continue to use the red box in Roaring Brook. It's absolutely illegal. There's more to say, but I'll finish it at Long Island Railroad.
Thank you very much. Is that the end of the public comment period?
Yes,
Any
it
other
is.
Speakers? Okay, thank you very much. We have the minutes on page 4. There is a change in the minutes?
Yeah, there's just one minor change to the minutes. The minutes as contained in the book indicate that EVP Sue Doring was actually present at the meeting. She was not present, so that one change needs to be made, but otherwise there are no changes to the minutes.
Okay, a motion to approve the minutes. Second, all in favor? Okay. The work plan, are there any changes to the work plan?
The only thing that I would note is that for Metro North, as for the other agencies, both diversity and safety are no longer on the September agenda. They will be on the October agenda.
Okay. Why don't we go right into the president's report? Kathy?
So I want to start with a bit of good news, actually good news on 2 fronts. So the first front is PTC. This has been an area that the board has taken tremendous interest in, as has this committee. I'm very pleased to report that we were actually successful in terms of filing our RSD, that's Revenue Service Demonstration Application with the FRA. It went into the FRA on September 11th. It is currently pending there. We are anticipating approval to begin RSD operations sometime mid-November, which is what we've been reporting to the committee for a while. We are in the process of working on a schedule for the simultaneous commissioning of PTC once we get released from RSD by FRA. That alternative schedule is currently being worked on now, and I just heard a little while ago that we, just this morning, I think, received approval from FRA to conduct interoperability testing with both CSX and Amtrak. So we're making very good progress on PTC, and we'll continue to keep the committee updated on a monthly basis. There's a PTC report in the book this month. We don't have any kind of in-person presentation. We'll do that next month when we meet jointly with Long Island. But on the whole, progress has been good.
Well, on page, just on PTC for a moment, on page 52, the most important word on the 4th sentence is all federal requirements.
Right.
Not some federal requirements, all federal requirements.
Yeah.
That's the most important word on that page.
Yeah, and I want to thank my PTC team because they've been working very, very hard, not just this past summer, but especially this past summer in terms of some of the testing that's been going on our pilot segment. Some of you were able to ride along. They've been working very, very hard. So we view the filing of this RSD application, although far from the last step in this very long project, as being a significant milestone. So I want to thank them for all their hard work. There is a procurement, just to call your attention to it if you haven't seen it already, adding a little bit more money to the Dayton T. Brown contract as a part of our effort to try to deploy PTC as aggressively as possible. I've been challenging my team basically every week to come up with more resources or requests for resources if they feel that they could use them to speed up the deployment. So this is part of that effort. They will provide some teams for us to assist us in terms of commissioning some of the radio cases. So that procurement is in the book. The other bit of good news, and you'll see this huge banner over here, and an award which we're about to present, Metro North has become the first railroad in North America to achieve ISO 50001 certification, which is an internationally recognized benchmark that guides and supports organizations to manage energy more efficiently. The certification is presented by the International Organization for Standardization, and it underscores our commitment to protecting our environment. We're in full compliance with international standards to review our energy use, manage our energy consumption, and conserve natural resources. This certification comes after years of work. We've established an integrated system to monitor and improve how all energy is used throughout the railroad, and this encompasses traction power substations, diesel locomotives, heating fuel boilers, and lighting systems at facilities throughout the territory, including Grand Central. A new energy management system software allows Metro North to accurately track energy use, better identify ways to reduce consumption and to save money. All of our employees are actively involved in the conservation effort, and we've been trained to seek out ways that the railroad can use to reduce energy, and suggestions are relayed to our special energy group to evaluate and enact changes. Some of the initiatives underway to minimize the impact on our environment include energy efficiency upgrades at major rail yards, green buildings that use sustainable technology and non-toxic materials, recycling shop materials, everything from light bulbs to batteries to used petroleum products, and installing a fuel monitoring and leak detection system. Future projects in development include a wayside energy storage system pilot, which is part of our Way Ahead plan, and lighting and utility improvements at Grand Central, which will add up to significant reductions in consumption and cost. The ISO certification puts Metro North on a path, my phone. Whoops. There we go. ISO certification puts Metro North on a path to save $2 million annually by 2020 to further reduce its carbon footprint. So I'm very proud that we were able to offer safe and reliable transportation to our customers while at the same time being a leader in terms of being a steward for our environment. Our team at Metro North worked on this project for 3 years, and I'm happy to recognize them today. They're here in the audience. Jack Ragusio, Senior Director, Operating Capital Projects and Financial Management. Robert Culhane, Director, Operating Capital Budget and Performance Improvement. And then our Energy Group. Vince Gill, Associate Deputy Director. Marina Mayers, Assistant Director. Dana Coyle, Manager. And then our MTA sponsors, Bob Foran. That's my phone again. Whoops, there we go. Bob Foran, our Chief Financial Officer, who is an early MTA backer of both forming our Energy Group and supporting our decision to pursue ISO certification. And Nora Ostrovskaya, the Director of Strategic Initiatives, whose team works with the various MTA agencies to lend strategic support to energy programs, processes, and initiatives. So I want to thank this group, congratulate them on the job well done, and there's a continuing commitment on the part of Metro North to be energy efficient and identify opportunities for energy efficiency. So I'm going to have the group come up, we're going to present the certificate, and thank them all very much. They brought the banner down on the subway, so we figured we might as well have it in the picture. So on from the good news into the not so great news, which has been our service delivery over the course of the summer. We've had a rocky summer, and we've been keeping the committee apprised on that. You know, we've got a number of different things going. We've got a very robust infrastructure project going this summer, probably as it turns out a little bit too robust because it really has strained our resources. We've had equipment availability issues because of the PTC installations and then some chronic problems with the locomotive fleet, which we talked about last month. The good news is, if there is good news, is that we are aware of these issues. We're working on these issues. We've developed a number of strategies to address our performance and hopefully put things on a sound footing soon. We've got a lot of infrastructure projects going on now, between now and really when the cold weather comes, to try to improve performance in the short term. So on the Hudson Line, we've got several different projects underway, including infrastructure improvements over several fall weekends to improve speed restrictions at critical locations. This should improve running times and the overall reliability of the service. They don't require changes to the schedule, just minor adjustments. We recently removed a speed restriction at near Harlem 125th Street, which should improve performance through that area right near the Park Avenue Tunnel. We have already, we talked about this in July, we suspended undercutting on the New Haven line. We're still in the process of restoring that track to service. It took a little bit longer than we thought, but we expect that to be done in the next couple of weeks. We've got a lot of work going on the branch lines in Connecticut. So we're going to be busing on the Danbury line beginning next week, the week of October 1st, and on the Waterbury line the following week, the week of October 8th, which will allow us to repair ties, weld joints, remove trees, and do some PTC work. We are making good progress in terms of our PTC installations on our M3 fleet, which should actually improve availability of M3s. We've already spoken at some length about some of the New Jersey Transit challenges, and Mr. Getz spoke a little bit about those this morning as well. We are hoping that the number of terminated trains resulting from engineer and equipment availability will gradually improve over the summer. I've been in contact with Kevin Corbett over the weekend, actually, and I expect a response to the letter that we had sent a couple weeks back, actually later today. We're working on scheduling a meeting in the next couple weeks between New Jersey Transit and Metro North to be able to discuss some of these performance issues and some of the proposals that we had made in that letter back in August with respect to possible changes in the operating agreement between Metro North and New Jersey Transit. Speaking of west of Hudson, just to update the committee, we have recently replaced the original ferry dock at Haverstraw for our west of Hudson customers who use the Haverstraw-Ossining Ferry. This service began in 2000. The last thing I want to note is National Customer Service Week begins next Monday, October 1st, and we're going to mark this occasion. We're actually going to make it National Customer Service Month at Metro North. We're going to have weeks of activities there. The one thing that we actually have already started is under the auspices of our Customer Service and Stations Department, we're going out to all of our employee facilities just to let our employees know how much we appreciate all they do for our customers in terms of offering excellent customer service. So that's an outreach initiative, an employee outreach initiative that we began last year that was very well received because all of us have to be invested in good customer service. We will be having an event in GCT on October 30th. We have an internal customer service award ceremony of people who are nominated by their peers for the way that they interact with their customers and offer excellent customer service. I think this is, the third year we've done this? It's the third year that we've done that award. And then finally, in the October committee cycle, we're going to be actually launching and introducing our Way Ahead strategic plan. I know some of you have expressed a desire for us to get on the strategic plan bus, which we are. Long Island and Transit launched theirs earlier this year, and we'll be unveiling ours in the October board cycle. So we'll be introducing that to the committee the last week of October. Just as a sneak preview, the Way Ahead plan seeks to realize our vision of setting the standard for safety, reliability, and innovation in the delivery of excellent customer service by focusing on some key priorities. Continuing to put safety first, improving our customers' day-to-day experience, improving customer communications, investing in our infrastructure, supporting our people, and focusing on the future. As a part of our launch of the Way Ahead program, we're going to be holding Connect With Us forums. This is a program that we've had in place for a couple of years, but we're going to be scheduling one on each east of Hudson line between now and, say, mid-November. The first is going to be, I think, in Peekskill, the 2nd of October. And then we have others happening throughout the territory over the course of the next 6 weeks. One thing I want to do before leaving this topic is introduce our Acting Vice President of Customer Service and Stations, Tom Mitchell. I've actually taken a page, I think, from both Transit and from Long Island Railroad in wanting to have the head of our customer service group up at the table here to talk to you about what we're working on in terms of customer service. I think it's important to send the message that we are committed to customer service. We have stuff going on, and we want to report on good stuff, not just complaints. We want you to hear about the good stuff that's going on the customer service front. So Tom is here to talk a little bit about that, and take it away.
Good morning. So we wanted to highlight just a couple of our customer outreach programs this morning. One of them is our Connect With Us program, which we've been doing for about 4 or 5 years now, where we will go out to a selected station. What we do is we rotate stations on different lines, and in Grand Central, we set up a table. We have customer service managers there as well as senior managers, and we solicit information from customers. We encourage feedback, and it's a really good way for us to get face-to-face interaction with our customers. The type of feedback that we get are service-related issues, station and onboard amenities issues, as well as customer service connecting service issues. Sorry. As Kathy mentioned, the next one will be on October 2nd in Peekskill. Last one we held was in August, was in Grand Central, where we got some excellent feedback. And we're always looking for additional ways to expand our direct interaction with our customers. One of those is also social media. So we have over the past year or so, considerably increased our social media presence. We use Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have approximately 98,000 Twitter followers, about 16,000 Facebook connections, and 5,000 Instagram followers. We generally use Facebook and Instagram for planned services and new program and promotional stories. We use Twitter for service alert and customer engagement. Our customers provide us information on about conditions at stations and onboard trains. We're able to immediately react to that. We also get security and safety issues where we're able to make immediate notification to the OCC or the police or our security department, and that has yielded some good circumstances over the past couple of years. We also monitor directly Twitter for chatter in case things are happening that customers aren't telling us directly. Our security department does that as well. We focus on customer situations. They focus more on security situations. And our social media team is additionally looking for trying to stay ahead of the curve and looking for the next Twitter or Facebook, if you will, to make sure that we get the next, we stay on board with the customer impact. Thank you.
Thanks. So I'm going to close here. The one thing that I would say, Tom said it, we had a very, very good Connect With Us forum in GCT a couple of weeks ago. I think GCT is a good place because people have already, for the most part, arrived at their destination, so they're willing to stop and talk a little bit. But the one thing I want to say is that our customers have had a bad summer, and I don't want them to think that we're not conscious of that and not working on that. I mean, it's when we fail to provide the service that they pay for and that they're entitled, or the quality, they're getting the service, they're just not getting the quality of the service that they are entitled to. We know that, and we hear that, and we are taking steps, and we are working very hard to make sure that this is an anomaly. This is not the way things are. We are committed to turning things around and having safe and reliable service every day for our customers. And when we fall short of that, we are aware of that, and we are working very hard to change that. So thank you.
Comments? Neil?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kathy, I do personally appreciate your contrition. I think that's the right way of describing the way your tone, and I know your team feels the same way. And I am glad, I'm not sure why we have so much feedback on this line. And I'm also glad you have your RSD application. That's a nice milestone to have achieved, so congratulations. I do have a couple of points I feel obliged to make and a couple of questions. It has been a difficult summer. I have the, fortune, maybe you have the misfortune, this board member rides Metro North and the Hudson Line virtually every day, twice a day, all year long, with the exception of vacations. When I moved to Garrison, New York, in Putnam County, it was 1 hour and 5 minutes in 2004. And I said to my father-in-law, I think I can tolerate that. It's an okay commute, plus or minus walking from Grand Central, et cetera. Hour and a half, I can handle that. I grew up in New Rochelle. That was a shorter commute for my father, but hour and a half, I could do it. We're up to 1 hour and 22, 23, 24 to Garrison, and with far less reliability than I remember in the early days. Now, I'm not suggesting ever to go back to those early days, and we're not talking about the safety issues we used to have to talk about, and that's a huge, very positive thing. Credit to Justin's predecessors and Justin himself and the rest of the management team. But the commutability has become a real question, both in terms of the time spent and the reliability. The palpable pain I feel and my colleagues feel, my neighbors feel, you see it when you read 79.7% for AM peak. To me, that's the go time. That's the one of all the rows of this page 86, that's the one where you get the most important. People have got to get to work on time. Yes, they got to get home to pick up the kids and do all their things, but you've got to get to work on time. 79.7% is not on time. And even if with the 6-minute plus or minus, remember, that's your end-to-end time. That's your end-to-end. That's not the interim stations time. And I know on the Hudson Line, those guys try to catch up on the way to Poughkeepsie. So even if it is saying 80-something% on the way to Poughkeepsie, it is not that to Garrison. The intermediate stations suffer. And I will tell you that we feel it. Now, the why, you've been very clear. You're very, very clear in public settings and very clear in private settings. At last month's board meeting, I went through and acknowledged those very pieces. PTC implementation, your infrastructure project, the locomotive problems, and I think you're attacking all three. So the why is not the question. The when is the question. The when we will find a way to return to a greater set of reliable data, meaning reliable timetables, when we can rely upon things, the when. And I'm asking that inclusive of PTC implementation, infrastructure work you're doing, locomotive repairs. When can the riders start expecting a return to some level of reliability and a reduced duration because the commute has become too long?
Well, I think there are two different things there. I think and John can jump in when I'm done. I mean, I think that reliability is one thing, reduced duration is another. I think reliability, we have a handle on that. I mean, I think that, and we've said this before, and I'll say this again now. I mean, I think that the service on the Hudson Line over the summer, I think, has been unacceptable. I mean, I don't think it has been unacceptable. By any standard, the Hudson Line service has been unacceptable this summer. I think part of the problem is that we did not make schedule revisions that we should have made to accommodate all the work on the Hudson Line, and we have learned from that mistake big time, believe me, and we will never make that mistake again. So we are in the process now, through our operations planning group, but through sort of an interdisciplinary effort, to look at our 2019 infrastructure work. Number one, find out how much is too much, how much we can really, as a railroad, bear, because we don't want to bite off more than we can chew, because this is what happens when you bite off more than you can chew, right? So we're in the process of doing that, but we're also actively working on the April schedule to try to figure out what schedule revisions need to be made to be able to accommodate the work that we ultimately feel that we need to do from a safety perspective, but that we can also manage, right? So that's an ongoing effort. So I do believe that the April schedule will be a lot more reliable. We'll give a ride that's much more reliable, I should say, than the schedule from this past spring. So that's thing number one. The running time issue is a different issue, because you and I have had this back and forth before. I don't anticipate that running times are going to come down all that much anytime soon. That said, though, the predictability of the ride is extremely important, and our customers have a right to know how long the ride is going to take, and we have a responsibility to provide information so that they know what they're in for every time they get on the train in the morning and when they returned home at night. And we feel pretty confident that the schedule that we're putting together now for April will do that, because, again, we have a better handle in terms of the work that we're going to be performing, and we've actually trying to be a bit more predictive with respect to the impact that it will have on schedule. The wild card that I will say, though, and this goes back to something you said a little while ago, is PTC. We are aware, based upon the experience of other railroads, that PTC is likely to have an impact upon running times, and I think until we're in it, we won't really know what that is. So we're trying to be forward-thinking in terms of what impact that might be on our schedule. But that's a bit of a wild card because we're not in PTC operation yet. I don't know if you had anything to add, John.
Echo what Ms. Rinaldi said is the main challenge we have is to develop a reliable schedule that our customers can count on day in and day out. Again, we do meet interdepartmentally on a 2 or 3 times a week basis, especially lately, to try to do 2 things. One is we know we have the work we're doing this fall, and it's too late to write a schedule to address that. So unfortunately, the level of lateness that we've been seeing will get us slightly better as we kind of dial down the work for the winter. However, keep in mind, we're also entering our fall slippery rail season, which kind of offsets the positives with some negatives. That being said, the spring schedule is going to be extremely important to all of us, and in particular for our customers. And if you look at what we've done on the Harlem Line this spring, you can see that the Harlem Line, although we're doing a significant amount of infrastructure work at White Plains Station, has consistently been outperforming the Hudson and the New Haven lines. And the greater challenge for your particular commute and those that live north of Croton-on-Hudson is we go from a 4-track railroad down to 3, down to 2. And when we have to do important tire replacement and rail replacement, it's very difficult to do that without adding significant time to the schedule to accommodate that. And that's what we failed to do this year, and that's what we're not going to do again next year.
Go ahead.
Let me try to be slightly more precise in my when question then. You've described the infrastructure work we've been doing often in terms of either catch-up or delayed maintenance, delayed work, deferred work. Generally, when you hear a term like that, you think there's at some point then you've caught up and then you go into more preventative maintenance. I'm trying to get a sense, is it another 12 months, 24 months? When have we feel like we have caught up on years, if decades, of deferral? That's what I'm trying to understand, because the rider, if I say to my colleagues on the platform, I say, oh, we're catching up in maintenance. So, of course, the follow-on question is, when will we be caught up? And I don't have a good answer for them.
If I could take a shot at that, and I think you said the key words, we're catching up on years, if not decades, of deferred maintenance. You know, I've worked for the railroad for 28 years. I know in the late 80s, early 90s, we did a significant amount of infrastructure work to bring us to a state of good repair at a time where we were operating half as many trains. I know over the last 15 years, the level of work that we should have been doing, we had not been doing. So we have at least 15 years of a scheduled backlog to catch up on. What we've been doing since 2013 is we've been in a triage mode where we took a infrastructure that had some risk in it, and we've been doing priority triage work in key segments to keep the railroad safe. The next part of our challenge, and Glenn Hayden's been doing an excellent job on this, being our VP of Engineering, is to get us back on a cyclical scheduled cycle to do infrastructure work. And typically, track assets need to be reworked every 20 to 30 years. So what we're now doing is transitioning from triage work to make the railroad safe to scheduled maintenance to keep the railroad safe for the long term. So right now, unfortunately, we don't have, you know, it's going to take 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But we do know it will take some period of time to get us back onto a scheduled maintenance cycle that is probably longer than 2 years.
Yeah, the one thing that I would say, John touched on it, but I think it's a point worth repeating, is that when Metro North was first formed in 1983, and there was a real concerted effort to bring that decrepit infrastructure into a state of good repair, we ran a fraction of the trains that we're running now. So the fact that we have added service over the years, added fairly robust service, especially in the last, I don't know how many, 4 or 5 years, makes it a bit more of a challenge to be able to get the work done. We're not cutting back on service, but it makes things difficult and challenging in terms of balancing the needs of service with the needs of maintenance, and that's what we're working towards, is to find out what that balance is.
And one final thought, I guess, to add to what Kathy said. Also, the rules of engagement have changed from a safety perspective. The Federal Railroad Administration back in 2016 changed roadway worker rules that actually require us to keep an adjacent track out of service to provide emergency refuge for employees. So in a lot of cases where we have a 3-track railroad, depending upon what track we're working on, we have a minimum of 2 tracks out, and in some cases 3 tracks out, which is actually what hurt us tremendously back in June on the New Haven line where we were doing the undercutting. And to touch on PTC as well, right now when we have work that our MW folks are doing, we have something called a Rule 22, or it's also known as a stop sign, where trains get permission from the maintenance of wave forces before they can actually proceed. With the implementation of PTC that we're going through right now, that will actually enforce a stop at each one of these locations and then proceed. It might not sound like a big deal, you know, slow down or stop, but to get a train going from 0 miles an hour back to 30 takes about a minute or so. So for each one of these work zones where we have to stop and proceed, right there we've lost 1 to 2 minutes of additional running time.
Yeah, well, I guess we're in the customer service portion here, and, it's all customer service in the end of the day. I mean, conceptually, I prefer to think of it more like stakeholder maintenance or something like that, but it's really, whether they're customers or partners or stakeholders is really a matter of how you view the people we're serving. But it takes a long, when you make a cut, the cut happens immediately, or when you decide not to do something, it happens immediately. But when you decide to reinitiate the service or fix what was broken, that takes time. And this is same's true with human resources, same true with bringing on more employees. It's easy to cut a job, but to get a new person hired, get them trained, get them in position to do the job, that takes a substantial period of time. It's kind of like, I look at things mechanically, it's kind of like backlash in gearing. It takes a while to engage when you go forward. In that regard, I'm a union guy. You can never hire enough people for me. But, and I look over the roster of open positions, it stands out that customer service designated positions that has the highest saturation of open positions of all the other areas. It's 10% open positions. First of all, what are those open positions? What sort of customer service is not being provided? Are those jobs being filled on overtime? What's the deal with 10% vacancy rate? I know jobs come, jobs go. It takes a while to bring people on, but what's the story with that?
Yeah, most of those positions are the kind of transient, they're vacant positions, they're ticket sellers that bid in and out, station cleaners, our phone center, all those folks. So it's why there seems like a high amount. We do have several of them coming back in. It's really not impacting too much. We do have to blank a ticket office now and then, but I think we're staying on top of that pretty good.
So is it fair to say then that I like to put words in your mouth when it's possible, that it's fair to say that those vacancies are a function of migration to other positions on the railroad, retirement, station cleaner openings, a unclean station, or overtime, or still. I like to see people getting promoted, and moving on in the system.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, and yes, we do fill those at overtime as well. That's what I'm saying. It's not as much of an impact on the service as the 10% would indicate.
Any other questions for the president? If not, safety report.
Good morning. The safety report can be found on page 22. Customer and employee injuries continue to trend better than the previous 12 months. Customer injuries are down 14% versus the previous 12 months, and employee lost time injuries are down 12%. Our community outreach program TRACS reached over 6,000 individuals in July, bringing the total for the year to over 73,000. And this Wednesday will be our third quarter safety focus day. The focus this quarter will be on effective communication amongst all employees. And finally, this week is National Rail Safety Week. We have arranged various station and grade crossing safety events throughout the territory for the week. As part of Rail Safety Week, this Thursday, we will be hosting Customer Safety Day in GCT from 10 to 2 p.m. This concludes the report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on the safety report? If not, police report.
I'm happy to report that the month of August was the safest month that we've had since the merger of the Metro North and Long Island Railroad Police Departments. There were only 14 crimes system-wide throughout the entire system, but Metro North specifically, there were only 7 versus 13 crimes from last August. So they're down 46% for the month of August, although Metro North Railroad is still up 1 crime from last year to date. Unfortunately, 2 of the 7 crimes committed were against our conductors, both involving fare disputes. Arrests were made in both situations. 2 of them were robberies. One dealt with a robbery up in Beacon with a taxi cab driver at one of our facilities, and the other on the platform at a different location. And the remaining 3 of the 7 crimes were grand larcenies. Lost wallet where the credit card got used, an unattended bag in Grand Central that went missing, and some workman's tools that were taken as well. But outside of that, the officers are doing a terrific job as far as crime is concerned throughout the system.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for the Chief? And congratulations to you and everyone there on a great job. It's
Thank you.
clearly one of the safest places to go is to be on the railroad in that context. Let's go to information items. Preliminary budget, mid-year forecast, fall schedule changes in PTC. There are reports starting on page 38 in the book. I don't know if you want to make any comments on any of them, or if
Yeah, I
not,
mean, they're in the book if you have any questions.
are there any questions or comments from any of the board members on any of those 4 items? If not, we have an action item on page 62, the yearly DOT grant for the ferries. Yeah, for CMAQ. Are there any questions on that grant? If not, I would take a motion to approve. Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion is approved. And let's go to procurements.
Good morning. There are 4 procurements in this month's package totaling $447,753,000. There are 3 non-competitive procurements for $79,785,000. There is 1 competitive procurement in the amount of $367,968. The first non-competitive procurement, which Metro North, on behalf of itself and Long Island Railroad, requests approval to award a 3-year non-competitive purchasing agreement in the not-to-exceed amount of $76 million. And that's $36 million for Metro North and $40 million for Long Island Railroad to Wabtec Corporation for the purchase of various parts and components for MNR's M3, 7, and 8 rail cars and locomotives and Long Island Railroad's M3 and M7 cars. The second non-competitive procurement is a non-competitive miscellaneous procurement in the not-to-exceed amount of $1.3 million to Aspen Aerials for the purchase of 2 undergrade bridge inspection units with high rail equipment. Prior to this recommendation, MNR conducted an extensive industry outreach. It was found that the unique characteristics presented by railroad bridge locations greatly reduced the UBIU manufacturers capable of producing these vehicles. The 2 firms that were identified were Aspen and Palfinger. Palfinger is an Austrian firm which declined our attempts to have them proposed, as it did not manufacture these types of units in the United States. Metro North currently owns 1 UBIU, which was manufactured by Aspen and will be reached the end of its useful life in April of 2019, when its safety certification expires. The purchase of the 2 UBIUs will ensure Metro North will complete its current and future undergrade bridge programs, which consist of approximately 1,000 undergrade bridges, including Mudna and the Park Avenue Viaduct. The next non-competitive procurement is for additional funding in the not-to-exceed amount of $2.4 million to the firm of Dayton T. Brown, as discussed earlier by Ms. Rinaldi. DTB is to provide engineering services required to provide equipment and personnel to perform configuration, setup, and verification of PTC radio cases. In addition, they will provide outsourced engineering support for the base communication equipment for 1 year. The competitive procurement is to award a 48-month competitively solicited design-build contract in a not-to-exceed amount of $367 million to Skanska Echo 2 joint venture for the design and construction of Harmon Phase 5, Stage 2 of the complete replacement of Metro North's Harmon Yard main shop, including a new running repair and support shop buildings. There is a 2.5% program contingency included. This concludes my recommendations. May I please have a vote?
Any questions or comments on any of the 4 items? Andrew?
I have a couple of questions. First of all, Wabtec, you know, it says in here that we're getting a 2% average price increase a year. You know, when you think about it, I've watched this Wabtec now for a long time. We've bought a tremendous amount of parts, obviously, from them. That's a 2% compounded is a huge increase over the life of these things. And what are we doing? Number one, 2 things. new procurements, what are we doing when we buy new rail cars now to be sure that we have compatibility on some of these parts so we're not stuck with this kind of a contract, number one. And number two, there is no, I can't believe in today's world, internationally and here, that there are no alternate manufacturers for at least some of these parts. Maybe some no, I can understand that, but what have we done when we look at some of these things? Some of these must be components that are readily available from other sources. And I'd like to hear your comment on that. And then I wanted to talk about.
I appreciate answering that because these are very difficult procurements, and we use various measurements on this. We use the producer price index, and we aggressively try to. And that's why we're doing this with Long Island Railroad to try to get some economies with the additional quantities that we purchase together. We're heavily audited with these OEM agreements so that we ensure that we're always paying the best price available. Myself as the department head in procurement and Dennis Mann and Long Island Railroad, we're constantly challenging our staff to make sure that they're vetting this continually. So what I'm representing today is we can guarantee that these are just Wabtec parts. Tomorrow, we want to make sure our staff is continually checking to make sure that it's, if there's other things on the market or there's potential working with the engineering staff to find alternate source. That's an ongoing process. What you're seeing here in this particular request is the aging of our fleets with the M7 and M8. This is a significant amount of money for Metro-North for this particular company, but it's reflective of the increased maintenance which we anticipate over the next 3 years and over the next couple of years. To your other point, we currently have our locomotive procurement out on the street, as you know, and we're taking a lot of the lessons that were learned during the Transit's 211 contract and also the Long Island Railroad's M9 contract, and we've incorporated a lot of those provisions for commercial off-the-shelf provisions. So we are aggressively trying to make sure that we're not getting into the same old, same old. We are, in fact, challenging all subsequent car procurements and particularly locomotive procurement to get further and further away from being solely reliant on these contractors when possible.
Have we been successful in finding some alternate vendors for some of these parts? You said that this is actively ongoing. Have we been able to, have we been successful?
Yes. I will say yes. Is it significant in dollars? Somewhat, but in the end of the day, we're constantly reviewing it. I have staff members who review the listing all the time to make sure that we don't have things creep on the list that in fact ultimately could be sourced in other locations. So as I said earlier, it's constantly vetted, and I know Long Island does the same thing. Again, we don't want to send out something for a decal or something of that nature to a Wabtec when we can source that out in other locations. And we always look for the economies. If we become aware of alternate sources, Long Island becomes aware of that we also have found that source.
The other question I have is on the design build contract, and I know Jano's sitting here, and I wonder, Jano, did you have opportunity to look at this thing? Because here again, we wind up with two bidders, same people, at least one of them, and the successful bidder is one that does a lot of work for us. And I wondered, it said in here that there were 10, I think it was, I may have been mistaking it, but there were 10 originally, 10 others, or even more than that applied for the thing, for the, to be part of the process, but in the end never really were successful in submitting a final bid or plan for the project. And this is a perfect example, which is a big contract, $367 million contract, and wham, we got the same people that we always wind up with.
And Andrew, if you don't mind, the one thing that I would say, Andrew, is that because of the sheer size of the contract, we did do, and I'll let Al speak to this as well, we did do outreach. We did get the RFP in the hands of a number of different firms, but when you're talking about a contract of this size, I mean, this is the final phase of the Harmon Shop replacement. A lot of people who get the RFP are looking for subcontracting opportunities. They're not actually looking to take on the big job. So you really already have a fairly small universe of people who are able to qualify for a job of this magnitude. But we did do outreach. Al can speak to the specifics of that. But you're talking about, an almost $400 million procurement. It's a huge procurement. So mom and pop shops are not going to be able to take that on.
Well, in fairness, I think Kathy's right. The real question with these design build is, did we do full outreach to make sure that every outfit that potentially could be a leader of a contract of this magnitude understood it, that there was a discussion of the risk allocation, so we weren't chasing anyone away by how we did that. On third track, we had a pretty aggressive outreach program and talked to lots and lots of companies. In the end, we got 3 very comprehensive bids. So I consider that to be successful. So I probably need to talk to Al more to give you a more thoughtful response, Mr. Saul. But the real issue is on contracts of this size. As Kathy says, there are probably a relatively limited group of outfits that can shoulder the burden. And the real question in terms of a procurement effectiveness is how well we did the outreach and clarified what the risks were to attract maximum participation.
So can you get back to us on this?
Sure.
Jano, the other question I have is, it's design build, but did we look at the alternative, which was designing it, with an engineer and that we internally or externally designed it and then bid out how we would have come out? Because design build's great, but here, if we're just getting so few bidders on here, I mean, how do we know this was the most cost-effective way to do this?
Okay, so Andrew, can I get back to you on 2 things? Number 1, I would like Al to actually speak a little bit to the outreach because I think that would be helpful. And then I'd actually like John Kennard to speak a little bit about design build versus design bid build. I mean, I think it's important for us to sort of, again, reiterate that this is the final stage of a, 15-year long, if not longer, capital project. So we do have a fairly long track record in terms of delivering on this project. So if Al would speak to outreach first, and then John could speak to a little bit about the design build versus design bid build considerations.
And getting more vendors and contractors looking at this. We did just that. We had perhaps our best design build team working on this project. We had dedicated people reaching out individually to contractors and asking them, describing, which is fairly unusual when you reach out directly to contractors trying to elicit proposals before you've gone out with the RFP. But we did that knowing the size of this, and that Metro North typically doesn't have this size of a project. So we did a very, very extensive personal outreach to many, many different contractors. As Kathy alluded to, what ended up and the numbers that you see are in fact people who just really wanted to subcontract this work out. Most of them made an assessment very early on when they saw the scope, the complexity of the project, the coordination, the operational coordination that goes with this particular project. It was not for every design build team. Again, and the 2 people that we did end up with, we were very, very happy with their proposals. And I personally believe we got the full benefit of the design build process because we had 2 very, very intelligent contractors providing a lot of innovative ways to do this. And again, I think the cost reflects that.
I would sort of add to that. I mean, I think the issue of the outreach, this is, I think, the 4th of the projects we've done at Harmon. Using the design build approach. So we've been doing this for a while. I think they are all very large contracts. So those are very attractive contracts. So we did the coach shop, the locomotive shop. We're finishing up phase 5, stage 1 right now. All very large contracts. We've been very successful at Harmon with the design build approach. We've kept, I'll say, we've had within budget on all phases of these projects. We've kept any sort of change orders or any issues with contractors, I'll say, to a minimum. We're using, I think Al pointed out that we're putting a 2.5% contingency in there. For such a large project, you would think a larger number might be appropriate, but we have used numbers like that throughout these phases at Harmon. So again, I think we're very comfortable with the design build approach. We've got experience at this particular location doing that in 4 phases or 4 parts of the 5-phase project. So I think it's the right way to go for us, and it's been successful there.
The other 3 parts of the project, who were the successful bidders on those?
Great
Were they
question.
different contractors or the same one?
Well, the current phase that's ongoing right now is Skanska Echo, which is so they've moved from the current phase into this phase. Some of the challenges I think for parties when they're looking at this work is the coordination between the contractor who's finishing up the work and the next phase. So you get a little bit of that. It does provide some challenges to the new person in there. So, but it also provides opportunities for us to actually maintain an operating shop, which is basically what's going on there. We've been doing this for 20 years, building around our number one maintenance facility for the railroad, and we've always been able to, using the design build contractors, been able to, I'll say, to the best of our ability, maintain operations while working, while building
Who did phase 1 and 2?
I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't, unless you remember. I actually don't remember, but I'll get back to you on that.
So Andrew, between now and Wednesday, we'll get back to you on two things. Number one, we'll give you the contracting history of the prior phases. And number two, we'll get whatever Jano needs to feel comfortable that this is an appropriate approach in terms of awarding this contract. I mean, it's a Metro North capital project, which is why Jano has not been involved up to this point. But if you would like a second set of eyes to look at the procurement history, we're happy to make that information available to capital construction if that would make you feel better in terms of approving the award.
Any other questions or comments on any of these four procurements? All right, let's do two separate votes. The three non-competitive procurements first. Motion to approve, I'll make that second. All in favor, say aye. And the one competitive request for Skanska, I'll make a motion to approve. Second, anyone? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Procurements are approved. We have in the book the variety of reports on the monthly report starting on page 83. Are there any questions or comments on any of them for the president? Randy?
Thank you. One of my favorite things is the standees report. Express train from Danny Wet this morning seemed not so crowded, and I wondered about it. And then when I got off the train in Hoboken, where there was light, I saw we had 5 cars. But a lot of times it's been running with 3 cars, and I did canvass the platform and found out that there are a number of occasions where there are only 3, and there definitely should be standees reported. But it's just they can't get their act together over there.
Again, the standee report is accurate. It's based on the average number of customers that ride the trains and the available number of seats. It's not to say that, the cars are not crowded, but, we hear you, and that's why we've been talking to New Jersey Transit on a regular basis to ensure they don't short New York State service on the Pascack Valley and the Port Jervis lines. But as you heard Mr. Getz report earlier, New Jersey Transit is currently shorting the remainder of their system, so we're on top of it.
Any other comments or suggestions? If not, motion to adjourn. So move. Thank you all very much. The Long Island Railroad meeting will start in 2 minutes.